To the young adult panel. As you can see, I have no panel yet. I have hopes that they will show up. Oh, here we go. Are you Kelsie, awesome, welcome. So we have the beginnings of a panel. As we know, this is lunchtime, so I'm expecting people are wrapping up. We'll probably get a couple more additions here soon. If not, Kelsie and I will invigorate you with some amazing young adult question and answer time. And we love to hear from y'all. So first, before we get into it, I'd love to kind of pull the room. I'm assuming y'all all are writing or interested in writing young adult. What about, how many of y'all have not published anything yet? Show of hands. Oh, wow, okay. What about you have published 1 or 2 books? All right, what about 3 to 10? And 10 plus? Wow, that was pretty evenly split, awesome. So we're across the board. So we'll do intros for us, and we'll, as our panelists come in, we have Anthea, awesome. We're growing rapidly.
We are, it's good. The elevator scene is like crazy.
Yeah. So I'm feeling good. We're going to be fully staffed very soon. Quick intro, myself, I am Michael Webb. My debut book, The Last Shadow Knight, this came out in 2021. Young adult epic fantasy. I wanted to sell 500 copies. I'm almost at 40,000 now, so it blew away my expectations. Thank you. I've since gotten into a treasure hunting fantasy series, kind of Indiana Jones meets Percy Jackson. That's been a lot of fun. I have 7 books out, and I am completely in love with writing. Hope to do a lot more. So excited. I'm going to be moderating our talk today. All right, you want an intro and talk a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hello. Hello.
Yep, you're good.
I'm Anthea Sharp. I actually started my journey as a traditionally published historical romance writer, and then in 2011 went indie and delightedly never looked back. I write fantasy, clean fantasy. Not a big fan of that term, but with lots of fairy tale elements, and I have 2 main series. My Phaeland series, which was sort of game-lit before game-lit was a thing. A computer game opens a portal to the realm of fairy. I hit the USA Today bestseller list twice on that series as an indie, which was pretty cool. Yeah. And then I have my Darkwood series, which is also portal fantasy, but without the computer gaming elements. And I'm just delighted to be here to talk about books. So.
Thank you. All right.
Hello. Hi, my name is Kelsie Stelting. I write teen romance. My most popular series is the Curvy Girl Club, and I've been publishing since 2016. Sorry. And I think that's about it.
Welcome, Jillian. You want to give a quick intro about yourself?
Sure. I'm late.
I just got here too. I think
Are we there?
Yep.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I'm Jillian Dodd. I write young adult contemporary romance, a little bit of contemporary romance. Got 53 books. Been published since 2012, and have sold about 4.5 million copies.
Wow. Awesome. All right, so we got a few questions I'm going to pose to our group. I'll answer myself as well, and then at the end we'll open it up to questions from you guys. But I got a list of questions just in case you don't have any, so we'll be providing them. So I want to start with a common question in young adult is, what is young adult? How do you define that? I found that's a boring question, so I'm rephrasing it as, why do you choose to write in YA? And what is it about your stories that causes you to market them as such? So feel free, whoever wants to jump in, feel free to share.
I'll let you catch your breath, Julie. So I have a short attention span, and so I really love writing quick, plot-driven, like the pace is going fast. I started writing YA, I started writing my Phaeland books when my 10-year-old daughter, who was like a serious gamer girl, and I was like, there needs to be some really awesome, strong, the pretty blonde girl who's also super smart, good gamer. And so I kind of started writing that series for her, kind of keeping her in mind as a reader as well as entertaining myself. And then I'm like, YA is the best. So.
Nice.
Okay, so I started publishing in 2016, and I was like, had just graduated college, so I didn't really have a lot of like adult experience to write about. I married my high school sweetheart, and so it's always fun to write those happily ever afters. And then I always just wanted to write the books that 17-year-old me wanted to read, where like, you know, girls like me could get happily ever afters. Yeah, my series is the Curvy Girl Club, so it's like body positive, and because, you know, I grew up in a really small town, and so we had a small library, and there was like hardly any romance, and the romance that was there was not like about girls like me, or, you know, who looked like me or experienced things like me, and so I just really wanted to give that to other teens, and ironically, most of my readers are adult women, so.
Yeah. You don't have to, no. My thoughts are very similar to Anthea. I started writing for my son. He was 12 when I got into writing, and I love YA books. I just find they're very accessible. You can tell great stories of any type to a YA audience, and I wanted to write a story. I wrote it for adults, but I made it content appropriate for younger readers because I wanted my son to be able to read it. So that's why I got into YA, and I really enjoy it. All right, so YA can span wide demographics, age of the readers who get into it. So what about y'all? Who are your readers that you find most read your books?
I think for me, it's the Twilight moms, really, originally. You know, you had a brand new set of readers that have continued to read YA, so that was a big thing. Between Harry Potter and Twilight, a lot of people like to read, you know, those first times of everything, especially when you're older and your life is not spent, you know, you don't have 12 hours to get ready for a date. You know, you're lucky to slap lipstick on when the babysitter comes. So I think it's a escape from reality, really.
I also have a lot of adult readers, and that's, you know, when you're indie pubbing, and if particularly your ebooks, it's like the teens don't really have their credit cards and their Kindle accounts. So one of the things I did in 2011 when I started going indie was I went to Wattpad, and I started serializing my Phelan books on Wattpad, and got over 1 million reads that way, because I'm like, where are the kids reading? Because I also want kids to read my books, but hopefully they're asking their parents to buy them. But it's pretty much adults. So.
Yeah, mine are mostly adults. It's women of all ages who want to go back and experience like all the firsts again and heal some of their inner teen. And I always wanted to write books that like moms and daughters could read together. So a lot of times like moms will read it and they gift it to their children, or they can read it side by side.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges in YA is a lot of true young readers read paperbacks or physical books. They go to the library and they get a ton of them. But as an indie writer, that's very difficult to break into the paperback world. You know, just on average. So most of my readers are adults as well. Ironically, 60 plus is my largest demographic. I don't know how that happened, at least from the surveys I've done. So maybe those are just the ones who like to respond to surveys. Yeah, I don't know.
I will say, though, that we reach younger. It's not like I don't have younger readers. We reach them through ads.
Yeah, cool. So how about, speaking of finding readers, how do you find new readers? What are your best marketing promotional strategies for bringing new readers into your books?
So like for my business, a lot of it is through Facebook ads. We also do TikTok, and then we repurpose those videos across all of the short form video options that we have, like Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, YouTube Shorts. And we also have a blogging arm of our business. That's not something I would like recommend to anyone starting out, but that brings in new readers to the website and engages our current readers. So those would be the big ones.
Same, except for the blogging.
I'm always very interested in kind of the new things that are being opened up in terms of like subscriptions, things like that. And particularly from my Wattpad experience, YA often lends itself well to serialization because you generally have shorter chapters. It's very cliffy, so you can kind of do that. So I've played with serialization. I also, my big thing in the last year and a half has been Kickstarter, and I found a lot of new readers via Kickstarter. And I'll be on a Kickstarter panel later where I will go into that. So.
Nice.
And I had a really bad Kickstarter experience. So you never know what's going to work for your business, but you have to try.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of my marketing success has been trying to find ways to connect with people that I have a connection to. You know, the people who, they go to your church, they hear that you wrote a book, like, you wrote a book? Sure, I'll check it out. Or, you know, people live in my neighborhood. Or a big one for me was I have a day job. I work for a large corporation, and they found out I write books, and they did an article on me. They posted it on the main company website. I probably sold 1,000 books from the trickle effect of people, whoa, that's crazy, that's all, I'm gonna go check it out. So finding some sort of connection that make people say, wow, I've never heard of someone I knew who was an author. I find it's very easy to get someone to want to check you out if you have that connection. So there's a lot of different things that sell books. Having a perfect cover, having great characters, having a great plot, hitting the tropes. What could you point to as, would you say, the most important thing? If you're trying to have a book be successful, what would be the most important thing to do to hit right?
I mean, I think writing a good book, first of all, but for me, it's the cover, probably number one, followed by the blurb. And I think there has to be a really great dichotomy between the two, because if you have an odd title that doesn't match your blurb, or the picture doesn't give you the vibe of the genre, you're sending mixed messages, and readers click away when you send mixed messages because they don't know what they're getting.
Yeah.
I would say be Jillian Dodd. And yeah, just really learn how to market your books. Like, yes, write a good book.
Like, look at your covers.
Yeah.
I know exactly what I'm getting.
Covers.
And I'm only looking at the back, right? Yeah. I mean, I think it's just the back of it. I can tell exactly the genre.
Yeah. So
The titles make sense to me based on the back of the cover. So it just works, right?
yes.
I think, like, for me, a lot of my planning goes in before I've ever written the first word of the book. And that really helps, so I can make sure that what I'm delivering is something that readers really want to read. I know I think you write just what you want to write.
I do.
And if I just wrote whatever I wanted to write, people would be like, what is this? So I think, like, some good planning and strategizing around, this would be a really good hook to readers. They would be interested in this, and being intentional in the creating process. So you don't get to the end and you're like, okay, how do I pitch this now?
That's me.
I think the thing that stood out for me the most, you're just hearing reviews and feedback from readers that help a story stand out, whether it's my story or someone else's, is the characters in the story. Whatever genre, because we're YA, so we're all over the board of what actual genre that is. But if you have good characters that people buy into, then they're going to care about your story, they're going to care about what happens, even if it's not action-packed and lots of plot twists and everything, but if they care about your characters, they're going to stick with you, and they're going to tell other people about it. So what about y'all? If you had to start again, what is something you would do differently in your book-selling career, now that you know what you do?
I have a great answer for this. So YA, it's early on in indie, the things like, don't worry, don't bother with print. Just do ebooks. Don't bother, like hardback, forget it. I really wish that I had ignored that and just gone directly. I sell a lot of hardbacks. I sell a lot in-person events. I sell a lot on retailers, and I sell a lot through Ingram into libraries. And I know that they're going to libraries because you can look yourself up on the WorldCat catalog and see what libraries worldwide have your books. So I really wish that I'd just really embraced print. So.
Cool.
And the other reason to do that is it sucks when you have to go back and do like 20 books. Because you're like, now I do need print, and it's much easier to do them as you publish them.
Yeah, I'm curious, I have this question, so I imagine a lot of you too. How do you get to libraries? You say you successfully sell to libraries print books. Do you have a strategy, or how did that work for you?
Through Ingram. Get
Just
on
putting
Ingram.
it out there and then libraries find it?
And then ideally, if you can get a trade review like Publishers Weekly via Book Life for free, and if you write a good book, they'll say something, and you can reach out to your local librarians. And there's courses and there's great talks out there about how you get to libraries, but that's really opened up to indies a lot more in the print realm, and then also obviously digitally. It's like wide open for indies now.
I've never heard of Book Life, so I'm like, take a note.
So Book Life is the indie Publishers Weekly kind of platform. You can put your book up, and they try and upsell you, of course. They're like, well, you should pay for a review, but you don't have to. You just say, no, just give me a free one.
The reverse of that, what's a difficult choice that you made in your career that you said, yes, that was exactly right? I struggled with that decision, but it ended up working out perfectly.
I think for me it was committing to a series. So I laid out a plan for at least a 5-book series, and before I wrote book 1, I knew what each main trope was going to be and who the main hero was going to be, and for it took a year of writing all of those books and getting them ready. And I backlogged some of my books so I could release them a little bit faster and gain momentum at the beginning of the series. And I think it's really hard to work when you're not getting those pings of oh, here's a new review and here's a new sale. But it was a really good choice for me.
I would say writing series is something I love to do, and big cliffhangers, even though I know people hate them. They
Yes,
sell
cliffhangers.
books. So that's pretty much one thing I did write, probably.
You were a legend for how you.
For cliffhangers?
No, for your pricing. I mean, you were early in on saying my books are worth not 99 cents or $2.99 or even $5.99.
So I was kind of dumb. I mean,
No,
I
you
didn't
were
know
great.
anybody when I started in 2011. Well, I was. and I read traditionally published books, and those ebooks were $12.99 and $14.99. I thought, well, I'll be cheaper. I'll be $9.99. I would pay that. And then I realized that most indies were at 99 cents back then, or $1.99. And when everybody told me you'd sell triple the books, my friend Jen's laughing here, they said you'd sell triple the books if you lowered your prices. So I tried that, and I didn't. And so I've just stayed. And I think that a lot of people have thought, based on my covers and my price point, that I am traditionally published. So I think that helped me have more. It sounds bad, but back then self-published was a bad word, and you couldn't get reviews. But I think that people didn't think I was self-published, and there was something mental about that thought, oh, this must be okay because it's $9.99, right? I don't know,
Yeah.
but we stuck with it.
I feel like you're the only one that worked for that. My books at
You didn't start that way, though.
at $9.99, I would have sold one copy to my mom.
Yeah.
But you had, and back in 2011, there was a lot of self-published books that did not look like traditionally published books. Now self-publishers are actually better
Yeah,
looking than a lot of
except I
trad
hand drew my first cover.
Was that the one with the frog?
No, it was just it was a big pink heart. I mean, it was cute, and it was very graphic. It stood out amongst a lot of, we had a lot of bad covers back then. I mean, even my first Keaton cover was blurry, because I had somebody actually do a cover for me. And I think it just stood out, maybe I don't know.
Well, I would say for me, that was my, what I was glad I did was I agonized over a cover for my debut book. All right, what approach do I take? Do I get the $99 cheapest cover I can? Do I spend a few $100s, or do I absolutely blow my budget and get the top of the line, even though I will never make that money back? And I decided I want a book that looks good. And so even if it doesn't pay off, I'm gonna splurge for it. So my covers, which I absolutely love, I went with my cover designer, and I've used him for every book since. And that's the #1 piece of feedback I get when people see, especially in-person events. I'll do a big sign that's got the art, and they'll beeline across the room and say, yes, tell me about your books, that's what I want, without even knowing anything about it, just looking at the image. So for me, investing in covers was huge. We always get feedback from readers. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. What's something that stands out as one of the most encouraging pieces of feedback that y'all have gotten from a reader?
I mean, sales.
There you go. They bought it.
I try not to read reviews. When I'm feeling bad, I go read 1 stars, and then I cry. I'm never writing again. It's amazing, though, how you can read 50 beautiful reviews and 1 bad one that
For sure.
seems so personal,
Yeah.
and you're just like, why am I even doing this?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, for me, it makes me think of, there's a reader, she's mid-40s. She reached out to me, and she has a daughter who's 12, which was my son's age when I started writing. And she is always, her daughter is a voracious reader, reads everything under the sun, constantly devouring books. And she wanted something that she could read along with her daughter for them to have that bonding experience. So she reached out to me. She said, I absolutely loved your book. It was amazing. My daughter absolutely loved it. I am now her daughter's favorite author of all time. And she even dressed up as a Shadow Knight for Halloween. And she sent me pictures. I put it on my newsletter, and I was like, that just made my day. Like that, that's what I feel. What drives me for writing. The sales are awesome, and when I get the check that pays the bills, and that's amazing. But when I get that personal feedback from someone that, there's the 50 that have a good review and the one that's a bad review. Throw all that out the window. If one person gives me a personal message about something that impacted their life, that makes a difference for me. KU or wide? I know we write in different genres within YA, but what works for you, and do you have an opinion on what works best overall in the genre?
So I'm doing really well wide right now. Specifically with my direct store that I do through Shopify. That's been very successful. I started my series in KU and built it that way, and then I felt that KU just, like, my books weren't hitting their potential anymore, and it's been a really good move for me.
Can you share what you just hit?
I just hit my first 7-figure year. So.
Wow.
For me, I've mostly was wide my whole career. I had about a year and a half I went in KU. It was extremely successful. My very first book became a breakout 9 years later because of lockdown. It was in KU, the whole series was. It was really great. But then they got the author bonuses, and I wanted to have my direct store, and it just made sense to offer it more places, I think. So it really depends on what you want, what you feel, what your philosophy is, and what you're earning, right? You've got to take chances. We've been wide, we've been in KU. I think all of us probably struggle with that. And there's nothing wrong with either. I don't like when people say you've got to do this, you've got to do that. You have to go with your books and what fits your reader and what you want to do. I mean, it's sure a lot easier to upload just your books to Amazon and only deal with them, right? But it's easy not to have to change prices on 47 different places. But you just have to decide where you are in your career and what's working for you. And when it stops working, how are you going to pivot?
And I think there's something to be said for experimenting. Maybe some of your books are and some of you aren't, and see what works well for you. Yeah, personally, I write fantasy, so young adult epic fantasy lives in KU. I find that's where my books have done well there. I haven't really tried, I haven't even thought about pivoting to go wide, just because I feel that it's going very well there. But I do, like I just said, try it out, see what works. Maybe the next series I go wide and experiment that way.
I think the other thing that's really cool about direct sales and KU, there's a lot of ways to leverage that and earn a little more from your big fans. So like you can sell your ebook and paperbacks and audiobooks direct before they go into KU, and then you go into KU and Audible exclusive. So you can do that, and then you kind of use KU to mine for readers, and literally your front matter and back matter is sign up for my newsletter, get information about early releases, read my books early, and even though people are in KU, if they love your series, they're willing to pay for it. And so you get, for every ebook you sell, you make 30-some%, about almost 28% more. Every audiobook, if you're not exclusive, is for me, 70-some%. And so it makes sense to try to catch them up front, but then still be in KU where your genre is. So that's a fun way to do both.
Yeah, being nimble. Kickstarter, likewise, you can basically do early launch, early release in Kickstarter, make your money, and then pivot into KU. Right. I've had one series in KU, so KU wasn't even a thing when I started indie publishing, and then I was sort of disdained it, and I kind of, that's a regret, right, looking back, and all my friends were jumping in, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna do that, and then they were making scads of money. But, and then I did have an Amazon rep for a while, and his job was basically to try and get me into KU, and that was right after I'd hit the USA Today list, and I was like, but if I was in KU, I never would have hit the USA Today list, so he could never really, and then I had just a small series in there but definitely experiment, and it can be very, very genre dependent, like you said. So.
Sure, yeah. So what about a piece of advice? We have a variety of experience in here, but what's one piece of advice that stands out to you from your experience that you would give to other YA writers?
So you're at a conference and you're learning a lot of things that works for a lot of people. And you really have to take everything you learn and try to figure out what's going to work best for your business. What are your strengths? Like, some people can say, oh, you've got to do TikTok. You have to do TikTok. Well, if you're just not comfortable with that, maybe that isn't for you. Maybe you need to leverage your strengths in different ways. And so don't be afraid to try to mix and match what works for other people to figure out what works for you, and know that you have your own path and that's okay.
I would say write the books you love and keep writing. Like, the writing comes first, and always try to step up your craft level and talk to other YA writers and read widely in your genre, know what's going on.
I would say to find someone who's one step ahead of you. And Jillian's laughing because that's I would find someone who's one step ahead of you, whose career you admire, who you look up to, and ask them if they will take mercy on you.
Kelsie came to my house for a week and shadowed me and my team.
Yes.
And we had a ball.
Yeah,
and now
that was
she's
great.
like, she messaged me and said, my God, I did this at my direct store, and thank you for telling me to go direct. And I was like, what are you doing?
I know, you're
Because
like,
I
I'll be at
wasn't,
your
I
house
wasn't
next
doing
week.
that. I wasn't doing that. So sometimes I was just like, anyways, it's fun.
Yeah, but you never know unless you ask. And like when I was just starting out, maybe there was someone who, had 1 or 2 books published and I didn't have any, and I could reach out to them and ask, and then you can become that person to someone else over time. Because I think a lot of us try and figure things out on our own and look it up online, and we just waste a lot of time struggling when it doesn't need to be that way.
It's a great point, and I love that advice. You never know unless you ask. I can't tell you how many people I have asked for things that I have no business asking them for. And most of the time, they either turn me down or don't even reply, but a lot of times they do. And a lot of the knowledge I've had and connections I've made is from some of these outside-the-box requests to connect with people that have really paid off. I think my advice, this would be specifically for maybe newer people, that was big for me was get help with your writing. If you haven't published a lot of books and you're working on your first one, you just got a couple out, personally, I relied very heavily on beta readers, developmental editors, line editors. I had no idea how little I knew about writing when I started writing this. And I finished my draft, and I'm getting people to read it, and they're like, yeah, it's good. I'm like, I guess it's good. I don't know. But now I'm working with a developmental editor, and they destroy it with red pen. And I'm like spending months revising it. And then get with beta readers who actually knew what they were doing, some other writers who would go through it. And I learned so much I had 9 major revisions of The Last Shadow Knight before I published it. And had I not done that, it wouldn't have nearly done as well as it has. So that would be my advice is you don't know what you don't know at the beginning, so make sure you're reaching out to get that input from other people who do know what they're doing.
And not your friends and family.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
I will say neither Kelsie or I do a lot of that. I got some advice in the beginning of my career that I needed to completely change a character that I wanted to write 700, 800 books about, and I left that just defeated. I thought this series is never, she told me it was never going to sell if I didn't change this character, that she wasn't likable enough. And I was just like, I cried the whole way home. It was like at a book club thing, not a book club, but learning to write books. And I just decided that I had to go with a story that was in my head and in my heart, and that I knew that I could make it something that people wanted to read because it's a story that I wanted to read. And so take what experts tell you with what's in your soul.
I would say, and that's so subjective too, but craft, the basic level of craft of where do you put a comma, some of
Sure, use an
some
editor.
of those things, there's the number one resource I always recommend to newer writers is Self-Editing for Fiction Writers, 2nd edition by Brown and King. And that's a deeply layered book. I mean, I've been writing fiction since the early 2000s, and I go back and I reread it, and I'm like, oh, gee, I wasn't even ready to hear this
Learn that
part.
at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
I think for me, you have to be really protective of who you let into your creative process. And so I've hired editors that were like, recommended on a Facebook group, and they said really mean things in my document. And I'm like, I'm never working with you again. I don't want to hear your opinions. And, like I had a critique group when I was first starting out, and it was a couple of other authors who were writing the same genre as me, had, a couple of books out, and we would like go over like, hey, what do you think of this chapter? How can I start this book better? And I knew that they were people whose feedback I really valued. And I think and then that's how I found my editor too, was I found an author who was selling really well. I went and looked at her back matter and saw she thanked her editor. And I messaged her and I was like, hey, I love the work that you did with this person. Can you please work with me? And she's been great, and we've been together for over 20 books now. So I think just being really mindful about who you let into your process, especially if you're more of a sensitive creative.
Yeah, good point. So what would y'all say about the distribution of, where are your sales? Physical books, ebooks, audiobooks, KU, rough percentages, what would you say you sell? Yeah, we're gonna open that up in just a little bit.
Most of my sales are ebooks, and then I also do like a fair amount of print and audio. I'd say that's like probably 30% of my sales.
It's changed a lot with direct. I'm selling a lot more paperbacks, but I would say I'm probably about the same.
I do sell quite a bit of print, particularly if you pull in my Kickstarter numbers. That's very, very heavy. Hardback supporters are very much on Kickstarter. And my audio sales are good, but I just sell my audio rights to audio publishers. I don't have the bandwidth for that. So.
No, that's a good point. I'm the same way. It's like some of the things I want to do myself, and some of the things I don't have that bandwidth, I have no problem giving it out, even though I know I'll make less percentage. Physically, mentally, I have the energy to do other things, which is worth considering. Percentage-wise, I'm dramatically different. I'm probably 70% KU, probably 20% ebook, 15, these numbers aren't going to add up, maybe 15% audio, 1% paperback, probably somewhere around there for me. Good point. If y'all do want to line up, we can I'll be happy to take questions from anyone who has them. If we run out of personal questions, I have more questions we can jump into. But why don't we open up now? Just make a line in front of the mic. And
I'm just really excited you guys are here when E.L. James is speaking in another room.
I know,
I was
right?
like, no, I really was going to be like, hey, let's just all go there.
There's no one here.
go ahead.
Hi, I was curious what print-on-demand service you recommend for direct paperback sales, because I'm self-fulfilling right now and it's soul-crushing.
I self-fulfill also. I order them from Amazon Print right now, but Ingram Spark has a program where you can get discounts if you're ordering a lot of books because you're direct. And I'll be getting better prices now with them, so we're going to start doing that. But Book Vault is great if you want to do print on demand. I think they're kind of the one that, are you using Book Vault? She's fulfilling too. So Lulu is another one.
And they can ship directly to the customer on your behalf.
Yeah, so both Book Vault and Lulu are hooked up with Shopify. So if you have a direct store, someone goes in and buys your book, and then the webhook goes and says, triggers, and then the POD place prints it and sends it. But obviously you can't do signed copies or tuck in a bookmark.
Yeah, a lot of people though are doing digital signatures within their what's printed in the book. So it looks signed, no, it's not, hand signed. And then the other thing you could do is split it up where all of your unsigned or digitally signed books go print on demand, but you do offer signed ones that you self-fulfill.
Hi, I've had 2 young adult fantasy books published and was having massive problems with the marketing. Facebook wasn't working, Instagram wasn't working. They've told me I should do more TikTok. I absolutely effing hate TikTok. It is the bane of my life. So I just wondered if you could give any more insight into, like you sort of generally talked about marketing, but if there's any more specifics you might be able to say that work.
Do you have a great cover?
I am getting it changed. I'm trying everything.
I mean, I think for me that's one of, when people say nothing's working, your blurb, your cover, your title, do those fit expectations? And if they do, advertising usually works, right?
But that's a good point about TikTok. If you don't like doing it, you should not be doing it. I did the same thing. I tried it for 2 months because I felt like I had to, and I was so burned out on it, I gave it up. But you need to find with what you're passionate about, what you enjoy doing.
I mean, if you hate it, hire somebody if you can, when you can afford that.
She sends me a list every week, and it's like literally drawing needles out of my arm trying to do these videos. Like she tells me what to do, and I'm like,
No, they create the content for you.
yeah.
Send them books, they do it for you.
Hi, I was wondering if anybody has experimented with doing some adult or even middle grade as well and trying to take your readers with you, or do you suggest just picking a lane of YA and sticking with it?
So I actually have an adult pen name as well, and I separated pen names because I didn't want my YA readers like accidentally reading something that they weren't ready for. But most of my readers are really excited about it, and they'll like recommend it to each other because it's also in the curvy girl like sphere. But I would say when you're starting out, I would narrow in on one thing, because when you divide your focus, you're also dividing your momentum.
I cross over into adult, and it's usually because I don't want to give up, my readers don't want to give up on the characters, so we start aging them. So a lot of mine sort of turn into a family saga, or we jump 10 years and they're older. So that works if you've got a following within a series.
I think what may be good to be careful about is the content level of what's in your books. You know, so if you're writing young adult and that's the content level appropriate for people of a younger age, and then you throw out some adult stuff that you don't want to shock them with, you know, language and sex and violence that's not what they're comfortable with, unless it's very specific. Like if you did your cover and your title that reflected, oh, this is not young adult, and you could tell from how it's marketed, then maybe that'd be successful. But when in doubt, I think a new pen name is probably a much safer way to
I
do
do
that.
all mine under one name.
Yeah.
And then like I have a series called the Kingkiller Chronicles, and at the end of book 7, it skips 10 years. And then when we recommend the next book at the end in your back matter, we say the characters have grown up and so are their stories. And so if you haven't grown up, and then we say, you know, recommended for 18 and up. So then it's up to them to decide what they want. And it's definitely sexier and naughtier and stuff, but not crazy.
I think definitely find your niche and stay there for a bit, and then
Yep.
start branching out like later.
Perfect, thank
Cool.
you.
Yep.
So, Jillian, you had mentioned Twilight moms being a big part of your readership, and that's like my target market for my main series.
And do you write amazing things like your dress tags?
Yeah.
Your dress is amazing.
Thank you. I'm Queen Charlotte from Bridgerton. But so you also mentioned being wide for a little while and then going into KU. About how long would you do that? Because I'm wide right now, but I wouldn't mind seeing if I can hit some of the Twilight moms or other people. Is that where you reach the Twilight moms, or are there other places?
I think YA in general reaches those older readers as opposed to just the younger ones.
Right.
But for me, it's not KU or not KU. That's more of a, like I was doing 50% of my income on Apple,
Yeah.
but Amazon owns 70-80% of the ebook business.
Yeah.
So I knew that I was overperforming on Apple and underperforming on Amazon, and that's why I went into KU.
Okay.
So it was very much a business decision, not based on what I write.
Okay. How long, would you have stuff wide before you go into KU?
I mean, I was 8 years,
Okay.
9 years
Right.
wide, and then that was what was happening with my business.
Right.
And so we decided, I took my best-selling series in, and within 2-3 days, and I was also spending a lot on ads, and I had my entire series in, or my entire catalog in then, and I stayed until they cut author bonuses, so that was about 1.5 years.
Okay.
I would say just study what is appealing in the branding of Twilight, and then apply that to your books, you know. And I'm not saying like take marketing copy or whatever, but just really lean on the tropes and the vibe that is appealing in Twilight, and then make sure that you're conveying how your books are in alignment with
Yeah,
that.
I mean, and people do TikToks, like, was it Carolyn Peckham did the one where she showed the Harry Potter book and said, if you wish it had sex, she dropped her book on top and it went crazy. And so, you know, if you can lean on that,
Yeah.
you know, in places like that or in advertising, if you wish, you know, there were more books like this or this, here's an offer for you kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I've got some of that in my social proof and stuff.
Yeah.
It's my book's mostly compared to like Twilight with mermaids instead of vampires.
Oh, wow.
So cross your fingers, but thank you.
If anyone else, we have like 2 minutes left. If anyone else has any more questions, line up here. Yep. Oh, she's going to yell.
Can't
Yeah, go
compete
ahead.
with the dress. Jessica Brady, the Save the Cat writes a young adult novel, says that she thinks young adult books are the most complex stories that are out there. I wonder, do you agree with that? And if so, how do you take it into account when you're planning yours?
I don't agree with that. But I think it's what you love to read and how you just work as a storyteller. So like for me, young adult makes perfect sense. I grew up reading young adult. That's what I write. I would hate to try and write a mystery. That seems incredibly complex to me. Give me young adult any day.
So I wrote a young adult spy series that was incredibly complex. It's 7 books. So I just think if you're in even most of my series, if you're writing a big, long series, you do have to have complexity in foreshadowing, even though people don't realize. And for me, it's what guy is she going to end up with? So it's not complex on the surface, but all the clues are a little bit more complex, I guess, maybe. I don't know, like Easter eggs or something. So I guess it depends on your style and what you're writing.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so we'll wrap it up here. If anyone has any questions or wants to talk, so most at least will be up here. Are any of y'all doing Rave on Friday? I'll be at a booth at Rave if anyone's
be there.
interested. Oh, okay. So yeah, thanks for coming. Great, good to hear y'all. Thanks.